Hello. Oh, wow. Some of you are already waiting here. Thank you so much. Sorry I'm running late. Had to feed the boy who woke up, and I had to get myself a hot drink. He's been with me in the office, as you can tell, while I was trying to send out a few emails earlier today. I'm glad there's quite a few of you here already. And again, my apologies for running 20 minutes late, but it's the witching hour. So good. You've been talking amongst yourselves. Aged in the Sun says I'm going to have to get it on the flip side. Let me just quickly see while we wait for another few people to pop in. 12 of you, good. The Majesty symbol, okay. Oh, don't know what that Majesty symbol is, but Sinner Start is quite well read as well. Right, so the whole point of this was how to create from scratch a little Catholic citadel. Now, I need to preface this with a couple of things. I am not one of these, like, the world is falling, the sky's falling kind of guys. Is that better? No, that just makes me, well, I suppose if you want to see my face a bit more, that might not be a good thing. But anyway, yeah, I'm usually a pretty optimistic type of person, but I have always been, from a very young age, always ready to assume the worst, and that way, if it doesn't happen, great, you're covered. If it does happen, you're ready. It's also an ancient Roman maxim, si pacem para bellum. That's where the name of 9mm parabellum, that's where it comes from. Parabellum is Latin for prepare for war. So if you want peace, prepare for war, be ready for war, because that's kind of how you survive well, Now, I don't think there's many new agers here, but there are quite a few people that say, well, if you keep thinking negative thoughts, then you attract negative things. This is not about having a negative mindset. Again, it's a little bit like the samurai concept. There's a samurai poem of which I only know a few lines, which is a very long poem. It's almost like a book. And the samurais used to be trained themselves to prepare for death, because in their belief system, to die was obviously preferable than being dishonored or not following orders and so on. So the generic idea is not to be negative, but to be prepared. It's different. It's a very different mindset. If you don't know the difference, I don't know that I can necessarily explain it to you. I've always had it. Nobody taught it to me. I think it was innate. But just because I'm preparing for, the worst possible situation doesn't mean I'm sitting there fearful, worried about it or whatever. There's a little bit of this happened with the whole COVID thing, and Big Bear calling me a coward and whatever, and it was like, you're being an idiot. If you don't prepare, if you don't know what's going on, or you're not sure, or there's all sorts of shit going on, there's chaos, and you're not preparing for the worst, then you're a fool. You're making a mistake. It's your duty, especially if you're the leader of a household, if you're a husband, a father, if you've got children, to try and make sure that you're in the best possible situation. So that is just common sense, the way I see it. But what I'm going to discuss tonight, and it's going to be a point-by-point thing, so if you need to, maybe grab a pen and a bit of paper or whatever. It's just going to be like bullet points or whatever that you might need to jot down, but it could be useful to to refer back to, or at least, sometimes you don't need to refer back to it, but if you write it down, it sort of sticks in your head a bit more. And Now, the main there's sort of like 6 steps, I think. And keep in mind, I realize most of my listeners are from the States, which is not a particularly Catholic country. It's Protestant home ground sort of thing. So, and a Freemasonic country to begin with. So you're gonna have, you're gonna struggle to 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 find a pre sort of Catholic community orientated type setup. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That can be an advantage, especially when you consider how converged, what pretends to be the Catholic Church, the Novus Orcos, they're so prevalent that starting from scratch might be a better idea. Now, I know that in the States, there's already a few of you in Pennsylvania. So there's an idea. There's some of you in the chat. The Dances with Logos is there. Tom Mastriani, the guy that's on Social Galactic, he's there. There's a few of you in that area, AJ and so on. So that's probably not a bad place if you're thinking of where to go, where to move, and all that sort of thing. But what you really need to think about is your philosophy, your baseline philosophy, because some of these things, if you're a Protestant, you're going to think, oh, well, I'll just ignore the Catholic bit and I'll just do all the other parts. That's still not going to work. And if it does work, it'll be temporary. It might work for you. It won't work for your children. It won't work for your grandchildren. Now, why am I saying this? Because history recurses. I posted on Social Galactic today an article that was written at the UNZ, UNZ. If you don't know that website, I suggest you go to it. It was the response that Hitler did to Roosevelt. Roosevelt basically wrote out or made a speech about how Germany was just being arrogant, and they should try and have peace, and they shouldn't attack a list of countries, and he listed 31 countries. Now, I actually remember seeing a documentary that discussed this speech and showed a short section of the televised portion of Hitler giving his response to Roosevelt's speech. The whole speech was about 2 hours long, so it wasn't the whole thing. But it was a very well made documentary. And I saw this years ago. I'm talking maybe 20, 30 years ago. And I remember it because it was so powerful. And that's what the article at the UNS talks about. I put the link in Social Galactics, those of you that are on there. But I strongly suggest you read it. It's quite long or whatever, but it's well written, it's interesting, and it's historically accurate. And what it proves is that history repeats itself. If, not exactly, but there's recurrence. And what happens is I would suggest that we are now in the sort of 1930/39 era of, when the Second World War happened. Now, I don't believe that necessarily a Third World War will happen, or you could say it's already happening. We're in it. The whole COVID pandemic scam is part of it. It's a different, World War I, World War II were sort of like 2G warfare / maybe 3G warfare. Now the world has moved on to sort of 4G warfare, and this pandemic shit, that's like 5G warfare. Pun intended, 5G stuff and 5G 5th generation. So war is now fought by other means than tanks. For the most part, it's fought by propaganda and brainwashing. And that's what's happening. Now, the problem is that things like Protestantism and so on, as ideologies, as philosophies of building a community, they don't last. Look at America. America's scantily, a couple of 100 years old from when they became independent. And it's already collapsing. And it was based mostly on Protestantism, which was a flawed thing to begin with. Tell me now where there's a strong Protestant church. There isn't. They're all fragmented, crappy things with all the same pedophilia and all the same problems that the Novus Ordo Church has. What did last through the ages? What are the empires that were lasted the longest? You have the Chinese empires, but they lasted, yes, long, but they certainly weren't necessarily peaceful or things that you particularly wanted to live under. The Roman Empire lasted for about 800 years throughout Europe, and we have very good historical evidence of how it worked and so on. And you have to keep in mind that for a good chunk of it, and also a good chunk of the reason that it got destroyed, was the Catholicism, So then if you look at Catholicism, that's basically carried on almost unabated for almost 2,000 years. It's true that in the last 62 years they've taken a massive hit. But the thing is that Catholicism itself works and worked. So, again, using historical recurrence, while on the one hand, we're on the precipice of falling off into World War III, or already in it to some extent, on the other hand, you can use the same concepts of the initial Catholics, the early Catholics. In particular, I'm referring to Saint Benedictine, which in the time where Saint Benedictine started the Benedictine order, what was happening was a complete, shit show everywhere. There was fraud, there was wars, there was all sorts of things going on. And basically what these guys did is they said, well, what Saint Benedictine did, they said, well, we're going to retreat from the world and we're going to go to a monastery. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to become a monk, because again, history does repeat itself. It recurses, I would say. It's not an exact repetition. It's a recurrence of, it's like a spiral. It's similar, but it's never identical. So we're now in a situation where we've got a lot of different technology and so on. And yet the baseline of Catholicism is able to take all of these things, survive them, and in fact even use them to its own advantage. Because keep in mind that the baseline of Catholicism is both very simple, and as deep as you want to go into it, you can spend your lifetime, like people like Thomas Aquinas did, in going to the depths of Catholicism, right to the fundamental concepts and how you arrive from A to B to C, all the way to Z and beyond. So the baseline, your foundation, if you're going to create a Catholic Citadel, what's the point, right? Are we just LARPing? Are you just playing at, oh, well, I'm going to be like a crusader? No. What you want is continuity. You want to create an area that is as safe as possible for yourself and your progeny, your children, your children's children, your children's children's children. That's what you want to do. Now, we happen to be in a situation where there's collapse. Historically, in situations where there's collapse, what you need to do is you need to have these monks that save the information, the history, the tradition, and so on and so forth. Which is why, and this is going to sound particularly arrogant, but which is why a book like this is actually something you should probably have, along with the Code of Canon Law, of Benedictine Code of Canon Law of 1917. You can get it on Amazon. Is it cheap? No, it's about $60, $80, I don't know. Is it worth it? Absolutely. If you've got the Code of Canon Law, the Catechism of Trent, maybe the couple of catechisms before 1958, the Missal of the Catholic Church before 1958, my book will give you a history of what happened before so that you know what not to do again. And there is another book that's going to be coming out soon that with myself, it was curated by myself, and Todd Ojala put it together essentially from an old manuscript, which is a breviarium. A Roman breviarium is, when these monasteries started to create monasteries, they were praying. That's all they did. They're spiritual warriors. That's what Wooly Ram mentioned in the last stream we did. that, you know, people like myself are generally built to be physical warriors. If something happens, we're the guys that's supposed to be on the actual physical front lines. But monks are spiritual warriors, and they actually went out into the desert and these remote areas because, you know, traditionally that is where it is assumed that the demons live. And that's why they spent their time in prayer. They did all these prayers throughout the day, the night. They'd wake up early in the morning, you know, like 2 in the morning, they do a prayer, then they sleep again, they get up at 5, they eat in silence. It is a monastic lifestyle. And at the same time, they are self-sufficient because they dig up the land, they farm it, they produce whatever it is that they produce, from wines, vineyards, food, whatever. And they became very prosperous. Because they became very prosperous, the Vikings started raiding them because they were easy to raid. There was nobody defending them. Eventually, they made a deal and said, listen, you guys stop raiding us. You can have the land, but stop raiding the monasteries. And over time, the Vikings became Catholics. And these are my ancient ancestors because, like my little son, is still blonde-haired and sort of half green-eyed like I am. And plus, he's going to be huge. He's going to be bigger than I am. And these, you know, that's sort of the history of it. But Catholicism survived pretty much everything and will continue to survive pretty much everything. Now, it almost doesn't matter if you believe in Catholicism because that is the reality. That's what's there. So just on a practical basis, even if you're an atheist, right, the Catholic model works. It's historically resilient. It's still there. Yes, the city privationists are a small group, whatever, but we're still there, we're still alive, and we're growing. We're growing faster than you know. Keep in mind that Mel Gibson is doing part 2. You know, he did the Passion of the Christ, now he's going to do the Resurrection. Mel Gibson is a privationist. The guy that's working with him, Jim Caviezel, playing Jesus, I don't know exactly what his denomination is, but from what he said in an interview where he blasted everybody, privationist, seems like to me. He's certainly not a Protestant, put it that way. So, now to the nitty-gritty. That whole long introduction was to explain to you why Catholicism. I've done other videos on why Catholic or get the fuck out and so on. But I wanted to give you a historical perspective because to me it's obvious, but I've learned in life that what's obvious to me is often not obvious to a lot of other people. So it is important for you, as it says in the Bible, to build your home on a strong foundation. Don't build on sand. Now, Catholicism is a bedrock of humanity. It's created the most prosperous, the most peaceful, the most homogeneous societies on earth. You know, in traditionally Catholic villages, you don't need to lock your door. You genuinely don't. And there's still little pockets of that in places like Italy, Spain, whatever, you know. And if you do get robbed, it won't be from one of the people in the village. It'll be from an invading foreigner, you know, that's come there. So that would be step number 1. It's Catholic is the way to go, okay? That is, and hardcore Catholic, this Catholic. And I'll keep putting the book in front of you like, oh, you know, there's probably some gammas that are going to say, oh, he's grifting. I don't give a shit what the gammas say. This is a relevant book because there's research that went in here, and those people that are in the chat that have read it, they can vouch for it. The research that went in here is something that you're not going to really find anywhere else. And it's distilled the central points of why you can see that the present Novus Ordo is not the Catholic Church. It proves it. It proves it in a way that is irrefutable. So, and learning about proper Catholicism is absolutely important because otherwise you don't have your foundation. That is why you need the foundation. That is why I'm doing things like producing this breviarium with Todd, which hopefully in the next few days I'll finish that up, and then I'll make you aware of it. It's a breviarium in Latin. It's, you know, if you think that was done, you know, to make a lot of money, you got another thing coming. I'll be surprised if we sell, you know, 20 copies within the first month. I don't know, you know, but it is an important document. It is a very important document if you want to keep the tradition of Catholicism alive. Now, You might be in your 20s saying, but I don't know jack about Catholicism. I don't even have a girlfriend. And this guy's talking about creating a Catholic Citadel. How am I going to do that? No, you are exactly the guys that need to create the citadels. You know, I'm in my 50s already. Yes, I'm still producing kids, and I'm going to keep going till I drop dead because, you know, one of the guys I try to model myself after is that Jean Perizot de Valais. But if you're in your 20s, that's ideal. You know, you've got your whole life ahead of you. You've got a lot of work to do. And if you're thinking about it, I'm not a priest, and what if there is no priest in my area? You know, at the risk of stealing a quote from a movie, build it and they will come. You know, you build the citadel, you build the community. The priests will come, the churches will come. You build a church, build it attached to your house. You know, you make a little chapel next to your house, build your own house. So here are now the practical, that was the philosophical thing, and I spent already 20 minutes on it, but that is absolutely important. It is the foundation. If you get that wrong, whatever you build on top of that, it's not going to last. So that's why I've spent 20 minutes on it. The rest is pretty easy. You know what to look for. And you can, if you want to take notes, I would suggest point number 1, the proper Catholic thing. Get the tradition, get the books, become a proper Catholic. That's rule number 1, I would say. Point number 2, if you want to compare it to building a house, you need to have a strong foundation. The next step is that you need the basic structure to be simple, clean, functional. You need to be able to operate. If you're going to build a house and you think, oh, well, eventually I want a 17-bedroom mansion with, 20 bathrooms, whatever. Great. But if you try and build that from scratch, you're never going to finish. It's much better for you to say, I'm going to pick a nice piece of land that's got a nice view. And I'm going to buy as much of it as I can afford, but I'm not going to go overboard. Maybe it's just an acre, tiny acre. That's all I can afford. Fine. And it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's got good water resources. There's a little river that goes through the corner of it. Or there's boreholes I can build and have my own water. It's in a fertile area. I can plant stuff, So you've picked a good location geographically. And then you build a tiny house on it. A bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen. You kind of enough. Especially if you're one little guy, right? Maybe not even married. It's enough. You can always add on to it. And if you're smart, you'll design it in a way that you can build onto it. But again, making the parallel between building a house and building a citadel, that's what you want. Then when you get married and you start to have kids, or when you grow your community, well, guess what? Then you can add on little other buildings, you can add on to the structure and so on. So, and smaller is easier. If you start off small, you can be complete and you can become a little bubble of Catholicism on your own and then build it from there. So my suggestions are these. 1, it goes without saying now, Catholicism first. 2, I would suggest you pick a rural area. Now, this depends on your nation, on your geography, on whatever, on your amount of money that you have available and so on. But I would pick an area that is rural, tiny village or a tiny little town. If you're in the United States, so the 3 or 4 step process is this. 1, pick a rural area. 2, buy land there. Scout the area as much as you can, obviously, right? 3, either build a house or buy a house that's already there if you can. 4, get involved in the local politics. Now, in the United States, I believe there's plenty of states where you can have a sheriff. A sheriff is a really easy thing to get from a political point of view of power. It has many advantages. It's a control on the law enforcement of the area. It has a certain level of prestige and it has a certain level of political influence. Although generally the sheriff takes the orders from the politicians, it's not always the case and they influence each other. And you're saying, oh, but I'm just a 20-year-old guy, I don't know anything, how do I become a sheriff? Well, start looking at that. Maybe you don't want to be a sheriff. Maybe law enforcement's not your thing. Well, look into the local politics. I don't know how it works exactly in the United States, but in Europe, every little town's got a mayor. So doesn't matter how big it is, might only have a couple of thousand people and there's a mayor there. Well, you can run up against that guy, especially if you've got better ideas, better policies, you're younger, you're more energetic, you're willing to go meet people, you're willing to go door to door handing out little pamphlets saying, this is what I'm standing for. I want to save you, your family. I want you guys to have your own food. I want your taxes to be lowered. I want to be your mayor. And not because I give a crap about the politics, but because I'm actually a normal guy, just like the rest of you. Get involved in the politics. Get involved in the area that you're going to live. You have to get involved in politics. Do I like politics? No, I hate it. I have never voted in my life. And it's, I hate politicians, I hate lawyers, I hate that whole class of people. But, like it or not, we're now in a situation where either you engage with these guys or they're going to take over your life, because they're the guys that are deciding that you have to wear a muzzle on your face when you walk out and what time you can go to bed. It's becoming ridiculous. So you got to fight this shit. You got to fight back. And the only way to fight back is to get involved. And it's better to get involved from the political side of things, if you can, now, because the next step is going to be violence. There's going to be a revolution. That the next step to remove these guys from office is, instead of doing it with votes, doing it with guns, and that's uglier. So if you can, get involved. Even if you can't, even if it's already too late, even if you don't get in as the mayor, you've made a stance. You've created already a little group of people that are aware of you. And you have to be that leader, because guess what? There isn't another one. People say, oh, but who's going to lead me to Catholicism? I'm doing what I can here online, but ultimately, feet on the ground, it needs to be you. You feet on the ground. You're the guy that bought the piece of land. You're the guy that are in that little area that you want to become the sheriff of, or the mayor of, or whatever. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 follows on from step number 1. Have a wife and breed children. Make children. The people that win are the people that show up. If you don't have kids, you're not showing up. Now, I would strongly suggest, especially if you're young, that whoever you do get married to, you're at least sure that they're properly Catholic, because that means no divorce. Once you're in it for life. That is a very difficult thing, especially if you're under 50, or even if you are 50, it's hard for you, because none of us grew up with it. I'm Gen X. I grew up, in the world of divorced parents and that sort of shit, which luckily for me happened relatively later in my life. But, the so-called Catholic nuclear family didn't exist anymore, doesn't exist anymore. People don't understand what living in a society where that is the norm. They have no idea about it. So you have to recreate it. And if you've got half of a Protestant mindset from being brainwashed by the TV, the bullshit, the guys from Hollywood that keep firing that crap into your brain, and you think, I'm a Catholic, but in reality, you've got like half of your brain is like already been brainwashed into Protestantism, you almost cannot even imagine what it's like to live in a proper Catholic community where there is no such thing as divorce, where abortion is not even considered. It's literally like murdering people in the street. People just don't do that. People don't divorce. It's just not done. It's scandalous. It's absolutely abhorrent. It's like sad. It's something that just, no, who the hell does that? What kind of sick person would divorce? That's wrong. So what does that mean? And again, if you come from a Protestant mindset, oh, but what if my wife is a cheating whore? Oh, what if my husband is a drunk, violent, abusing bastard? Now, do those things happen? Yes, they can happen. But are they the norm? No, they're not the norm. In a proper Catholic society, they're absolutely not the norm. They're the outlier exception, and everybody in the community knows it. And in certain situations, the community comes together and says to the violent drunk, you're going to stop beating your wife now and you're going to be a better husband. Because otherwise, we will drag you there behind the fucking barn and beat the living shit out of you. And when you've got both broken legs and broken arms and you can't even feed yourself, maybe you'll start to think about treating your wife better. Similarly with the cheating whore, the women of the community will take her aside and say, hey, First of all, if you're a cheating whore, that means you're probably fucking around with one of our husbands. We'll burn you at the fucking stake. There is a community which, keep in mind I'm a misanthrope, right? I don't fucking really want to have neighbors next to me. I don't really want to have to say hello to them. That said, in a Catholic society, even an animal like myself would get along just fine. Because it doesn't mean that, I am policed with my thought in my house or whatever. No, it means that when I'm out in my Catholic community, I behave like a decent human being. I behave respectfully. And that's all that I require of anybody. If I behave decently to them and they behave decently to me, I got no problem. I don't care who they are. I don't care what they think in their own head. I don't care whether they agree with me politically or not. It's fine. So, and once you've managed to get, let's say you do become mayor of that community, then from there, it becomes easier to expand. It's the same story like if you want to run up against, if you want to become president of the United States, well, that's pretty tough. You've got a long road ahead of you. You can spend your whole life doing it and come nowhere near. I mean, look at that fucking idiot Bloomberg, right? Short little Jew guy who blew like $1 billion trying to become a presidential candidate. No one gave a shit. No one voted for him. So it's like, piss off. But if you can become the mayor of a town of 300 people, from there, you can make a big impact on those 300 people. And from there, you can make an impact on the town next door, which also has a mayor of another little town of 800 people. And you can influence that guy now. You see, that's how it works. So it's easier to go from, remember, building a house, little house, and then you expand it. Same thing. Another thing is that in a small community, you can influence the community a lot quicker. But, the days of the pamphleteers used to be like Lysander Spooner used to be a brilliant pamphleteer. He used to make these little pamphlets like natural law or the science of justice. If you print it, it's like 8 sheets of A4. And it's all the politics and all the legal stuff that an honest human being needs. Now, if somebody had put a leaflet of the natural justice or natural law, rather, the science of justice, they put that through my door, or they even better, they knocked on my door and said, "This is what I stand for. I'm the guy that's going to be running for mayor." Usually I'd throw that shit in the toilet because they're these smarmy fucks, and they send me this like 4-color glossy bullshit with them, like looking like a retard on it. But the guy knocked on my door and said, "Look, it's me. I don't want to bother you. Sorry. I'm just dropping you off this because that gives you in 3 or 4 pages what I stand for, what I'm trying to run for. I want to make a better life for everybody. Thank you. Good night. Sorry to disturb you." I'd be like, "Well, that's fucking unusual." And the guy came here himself. All right, what is this? And then you read something like natural law, and you're like, "Fuck me, I'm voting for this guy for sure." So you can have a much bigger influence. And printing pamphlets now, anybody can do it. You literally need a $50 printer and a ream of paper, and you can do your little pamphlets. So it's easier to influence things. And now you're saying, okay, fine, that's all true, but what if I'm the only Catholic there? Well, guess what? You build your foundation as you expand. Again, you don't start out building a huge slab of concrete if all you can afford is like, 10 grand. And you build 3-4 piles, you make sure that you got a basic little slab that'll hold your kitchen. And then, even if the bedroom is built on wood and the toilet is like outside, you got your base. And then you expand out. You also expand your foundation. As you go, you expand your foundation. You get another Catholic guy. It's already happening. In Pennsylvania, like I said, there's 3 or 4 guys that are already moving there. So if you're in the States, look into Pennsylvania. Get on Social Galactic. Interact with Tom or AJ or Dances with Logos. These are people that are already in that area. So some of the work's already been done for you. And if you're not, maybe you're in fucking Nevada, surrounded by strippers, gamblers, and mafia, or I don't know. Well, there you go. Get a little patch of desert and build your Catholic community there. Okay, so that's pretty much it. You know, and if you're going to keep bullet points, Catholic, rural, small area, get involved in the politics. That's it. It's like 4 little bullet points. Keep them in mind. I am now going to go through the chat just to see what you guys are up to. If you're asking any questions. Okay, you're talking about music stuff I don't know anything about. That's probably before I actually turned up. Okay, Nikitor says 1 question before I go back to sleep. All right, and I guess this question is coming. Incarnate. All right, so Nikitor's question is, can you fail purgatory once you're in? As in, are there temptations in purgatory that you can fall prey to and go to hell instead of heaven? I don't believe so. I've never heard of that. As far as I'm aware, I don't know. I'm going to ask, I think Wooly Ram's in the chat because I saw some comments coming up. One good point that I can see down the line, Wooly Ram says, gamblers, strippers, and mafiosos are prime Catholic conversion targets. Absolutely. The worst type of people can become Catholic. And usually do, because, you know, we know what we're like. And Catholicism is there for the worst of the worst. That's what Jesus came to do. He came to save the broken ones. You know, not the ones that were already cool. But my understanding is no. Once you're in purgatory, you're pretty much going to get to heaven, but you're going to burn. And apparently it's just as bad as hell. Oh, Tom's here. Tom, well, you put your name online, so I hope it's not an issue to tell people that you live in Pennsylvania and that they should maybe, you know, chat with you if they want to get nearby. He says he can't make it live tonight. He needs to read and pray with the kids, then hang with the missus. Well, hanging with the missus is always a good thing and also usually leads to more kids. So, well done. Take good notes, everyone, and let's pray that the Kurgan isn't a spook for the FBI. Why would I be a spook for the FBI? They're the fucking worst scumbags who sat on knowing about Hunter Biden, like raping and murdering little fucking girls or whatever he was doing, torturing, raping little Chinese girls. No, I'm definitely not with the FBI. Okay, some of you guys are going on about music. Thomas Arnold, we're definitely being entrapped. The Scorpion. Okay, looks like you've come to the end of the music talk. LS16 says the states aren't Catholic yet. Exactly. That's the correct attitude to have. And look, there are some strong Catholics there. Like there's a lot of the Sede churches are in the United States. I'd say more than half of the official proper churches of Sede Provationism are in the USA. So you're well positioned to take over. Well positioned. Also, it's fertile ground. It's fertile ground because, you know, you're in Freemason territory. You've got targets of opportunity everywhere, you know. David Perkins says 1,000 years of Catholic kingdoms. Okay, just because I said you should read the response of Hitler to Roosevelt, which, by the way, I wanted to tell you guys that I saw 30 years ago a little piece of the talk that Adolf Hitler gave. And in context, and you got to keep in mind, I mean, it's very difficult to explain to you how much I hate the whole Nazi thing. And I think Hitler was a mentally retarded fucking evil idiot. You know, like how anybody listened to that guy is basically what's driven me to study them and look at these people for a long time, because I can't believe that anybody would listen to what the freak used to say. That said, that part of the speech that I saw, because Hitler responded to Roosevelt's point one by one and fucking took them to pieces. And even just that little piece of the speech of Hitler that I saw on TV, that was, in a documentary, it was so brilliantly done that even I, who has always hated that kind of person, was like, well, you can kind of see as a point, And the interesting thing is how the United States media, the mass media, responded, and they were like gammas, They were basically saying, "Oh well, Hitler's confused. Oh, Hitler doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, he's just a little jumped up little dictator." But the fact is, and I wonder, because Hitler made some very valid points about what was really going on and the injustices that had been perpetrated on Germany after the First World War, and he made some very valid, eloquent points. What if they had been taken into consideration? Would we have had the Second World War? I think it's likely that we would, because Hitler was a jumped up little freak, but maybe it would have gone very different, So, and now if you look around, the amount of lies are all over the place. Now, just because I said that, doesn't mean that I necessarily want to equate 1,000-year right with 1,000 years of Catholicism. I would say let's make it a permanent whole Catholic kingdoms, I mean, that's what's supposed to happen after the Second Coming, right? New Earth and all that. Why not? Get ready, build the ground. And Michael Pecker says, "Good evening." Bongo Drummond says, okay. Bongo Drummond, if you think I speak too slowly, then quite simply wait for the stream to be finished and then play it at 1 or 2 times speed, okay? And if you're a gamma, exactly, that's exactly what Xenostart says. Wait for the upload and watch on 2 times speed. And he says, okay, good, fair enough. Maybe he wasn't a gamma. Daniel Pereira is here. David Perkins says, in the US, the sheriff has jurisdiction above even the feds. You can tell the FBI to take a hike. There you go. And if you go to a town of 300 people, I don't think it's that difficult to become sheriff. I'm sure there's some little kind of mafia, because law enforcement is the same. But you're going to meet that whatever you do. Whether you become mayor, whether you want to become sheriff, you're going to have to fight some shit, But fighting politicians on a political sort of thing is probably a bit better than like shooting it out over trenches, Xenostart says, for young men, do you think police or military service is good prep for something like a sheriff role? Yeah, if you're hell-bent on doing that, then I suppose that joining the police force helps, because it gives you an in to that thug gang, But I would try and pick where you're going to do that. Pick where you're going to be that carefully. Military, I have studiously avoided the military because you can get posted anywhere. If you're a soldier, you don't have a choice. They tell you, go there, shoot those people. You're supposed to do that. So I wouldn't advise the military if you can possibly avoid it. Police, different. Because remember that the police have to look after themselves first. So you can literally sit in your car and eat fucking donuts all day, which is what most cops do. And you're fine. And then you can go to another police station or a little town and say, well, I was a cop for like 5 years. I got a good. And if you're going to do that, and if you're actually going to study actively for that, maybe train to become, a detective, or, to go in sort of like as high up the ladder initially as you can. Try not to be just a random patrolman. That would be my advice. Jordan James is, I have an aunt in Yorkshire who owns some unused land. I feel like it's a calling for me to build there. Yeah. And Yorkshiremen are particularly ornery and bull-headed people, which is not necessarily a bad thing if you get on with them, Woolly Ram says, I would also ask, how did you not notice your spouse is a cheater drunk before marrying? Exactly. Look, mistakes happen, people change, whatever the hell, but that's the whole point. If you know that you're going to spend the rest of your life until you're dead with that one person, you're going to take a little bit more care in when you're picking them. Jordan says he thinks he may have to reach out to his aunt. I haven't spoken to her in years, but I think I could get it for cheap. Well, there you go. You know, we all got to make plans, dude. You know, because look, what is it today? What's the date? 27th. We've got 5 more days. You know, 6 more days, and then I think the shit's gonna hit the fan, because when the U.S. election is finished, I think there's all sorts are gonna go. And I do believe there's a very good chance, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but remember what I said at the beginning, prepare for the worst. I hope I'm wrong. But it's quite possible that from the 3rd of November on, you start pretty much the beginning of a civil war in the United States, the collapse of the American dollar, with the consequences of the collapse of the whole financial institution all around the globe, with the COVID stuff, and the elite motherfuckers still trying to jab you to death with their fake vaccines. So it could be pretty nasty. So, you know, if you're still trying to figure that shit out now, you've left it pretty late, but better late than never, you know. So work at it. Zenostart says, on the sheriff in the US, it is generally required that you either have enforcement experience or certification. May not be in some communities, though. There you go. I don't know. You know, I don't live in the States, so I don't know the details of it. But that is one of the things that you can go for. And again, Wooly Ram says, gamblers, strippers, and mafiosos are prime Catholic conversion target. Yeah. Todd says that he wishes he had a Citadel church within 100 miles. Yeah, some people don't have one in their whole country, mate. So, you know, be that monk, create it, learn online, connect with other city guys online. We got to adapt, you know, just because it's like, oh, I don't have a gun because I'm in England. Yeah, I know you don't. Get ready, you know, get ready to do what you can to protect yourself and your family some other way. If you can't own firearms. Oh, but I don't have a priest near me. Yeah, you don't. Doesn't matter. Act like a Catholic. Behave like a Catholic. Try and get baptized if you can. If you can't, you know, remember that God doesn't send anybody to hell because of stuff that they can't help. We all choose. That's the whole point. Wooly Ram says, question to the Americans. I hear that the local political positions are highly influential locally and much easier to attain. Is this so? That would be my take. Ephraim Salah says, any particular recommendation for an interlinear Bible? I have got one that I like very much. It's a Nestle Interlinear Greek Bible. It's got the original Greek with word-for-word English under each word in the main body of the text, and on the side it's got a column where it just gives you the generically English version. So they don't match because the generic English version takes the word for word and puts them together in a way that makes sense. But the fact that you've got the word for word next to it gives you a good idea about it. I've also got a Bible that the unschooled Protestants always make fun of. I'm just trying to see if I've got it there or if it's in the other room. And it's a big book like that. It's an Aramaic Bible. I'm trying to see if I've got it here, just because it would be good to. Where is it gone? Give me 1 second. It's a good thing to show you, just because I don't remember the name of the author. Here we go. So I found this quite useful, although, you know, like I said, the illiterate Protestants will make fun of this, saying, oh, there's no such thing. So this is what it is. It's, again, I don't think it's very cheap, and it was written by a guy that was, he's a Protestant, I think, but he's got like 10 kids, married for a long time. So that's it. The Aramaic, English, Peshitta, Interlinear New Testament, and it's written by fake Reverend, because he's a Protestant, David Bochner. But it is useful. It is. I found it interesting because, you know, Jesus used to speak Aramaic, and some of the Dead Sea Scrolls are in Aramaic, so there clearly is a relationship there. Although, you know, the original was written in Greek, I like to have that too. And then, of course, as your main Bible, generally the Do-I-Re-Mi English version is okay, is probably the better one to have. There are various other Catholic Bibles. I haven't made a comparison to tell you which one is best. And I have also bought the original Vulgate in Latin. And if you can find one, I think they probably have one in Latin with the English next to it. I don't know. I've got the just pure Latin one, but you know, if that's pretty hard going if you're not fluent in Latin, which I'm not. I'm not really fluent in it. I can understand bits of it though. And it's again another comparison for me because the Vulgate was a good translation done by Jerome around the 4th century of the original Greek. So keep in mind that the Latin Vulgate is a much better translation and more direct translation than the King James, the top Protestant Bible, which has been messed with by Pharisees for 700 years before it got translated into English. So yeah. Zenostar says that it varies by state, but generally yes, like little positions of political power are easy to get into. Some states like Connecticut have an entrenched establishment that doesn't let in new blood. That is a problem. You're gonna come up against that. So do your research a little bit, but there's always gonna be a way in. And Michael Pecker says joining the reserves is a good idea if you don't want the military life but want the skills. Yeah. Okay, what does Todd? Oh, Todd says yes. If you're honest and smart, you can do well and make a big difference as an older man, county commissioner, and so on. Yeah. So again, that's an in. That is an in. Noventelion says God must take a certain amount of pleasure in placing so many Sede churches in the Freemasonic US. God has got a very funny sense of humor. Very funny. I mean, that's why he picked the Jews. He said, look, I'm going to pick this tribe of complete scumbags, the weakest, losers, idiots, and I'm going to win using these guys as my base. And then, of course, he through those people, he made Christianity. So, yeah, he's got a very funny sense of humor. The whole Gideon and the 300, that's, yeah. Okay, so Todd says, good point. I will start looking. Yeah, good. Todd, even if you have to take a trip to like 3 different states to go get yourself properly baptized, so what? It's an adventure. Go for it. And be that monk. Be that Benedictine monk that creates it would be great to see the Ojala school of monks down the line. Although, in your case, I believe you're not like Woolly Ram, so I'd rather have the Ojala line of like many children and more crusaders, but there you go. David Perkins says, if the US goes to hell in the next decade, I'm wondering whether it'll fucking last 1 more year. Warriors will take over the positions held by gammas and corrupt puppets. There's a lot. You got to keep in mind that the enemy is not stupid, and there's a lot of satanic fucks, and it's only now coming out. People that I know, people that have been talking this for the last 30 years, that go like, could you believe it? Apparently, Hunter Biden maybe had some sex with his own 14-year-old niece, and he was chopping up cocaine with Obama's daughter. Oh, that's shocking. No, that's not fucking shocking. Because on that laptop, there's also him raping and torturing little Chinese girls. That's another thing that hasn't even come out in the mainstream media, but the people on 4chan and all that, they know it. And apparently, by the way, Hunter Biden died of an overdose about 8 hours ago, or whatever it was. Apparently, it's not in the mainstream media yet. And apparently, Joe Biden got a stroke, and there's even a rumor that he's dead. Like, I think Vox put this on his blog as well. So it's interesting times, but the thing is, there was rumors, what people call rumors. What I think I would, if I had to bet my life on it, I'd bet it's absolutely true. There's videos of Hillary Clinton peeling the face off a little girl and eating her. Okay. there's like New York cops that cried when they saw that video, apparently. I believe that that is true. And you tell me, oh, but how could you believe that? Well, what about fucking Jimmy Savile, who abused and raped little fucking kids with leukemia for decades, and everybody fucking knew it. Everyone in the BBC was aware of it. Everyone in fucking Parliament was aware of it. What about the fact that there were like multiple dozens of ministers involved in this shit? No one went to jail, just gets buried. The fuck do you think that is? What is really going on this planet is far, far worse than your worst nightmares. You can't even imagine how bad it is at the top. And these fuckers run everything else. And they've brainwashed the morons that pull the triggers into believing that, well, they're doing the right thing. So it doesn't mean that every soldier that's shooting at you is necessarily an evil guy, but he's definitely not on your side and he's shooting at you. You know, what about all the cops that are protecting the BBC and the people? Like, they had it in London. A bunch of people shouting, pedos, pedos, in front of the BBC, and the cops were like protecting the fucking BBC. They're on the side of the pedophiles. Because they want to be, because they're too stupid not to be, because they're lazy, because they're scared. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? They're not on your side. So it's not going to be that easy. And these guys that are at the top, they're not just going to suddenly say, well, I've been eating children for 20 years for the adrenochrome, but guess I got voted out. I'll just leave now. It's not going to happen. You know, so what's coming is French Revolution. You're going to have like guillotines on both sides. So Wooly says that he's got to go. So good night, Wooly. That was a while back, so he's probably left already. Ramshackle says, if you can get a group of Catholics together, you can likely get a proper priest to visit and celebrate the Mass. Exactly right. Even if you're a small, tiny community. I mean, a priest will travel from another country for like 4, 5, 6 people. You know, these guys, proper priests, they're there to save souls. They're not, you know. And you got quite a few of those guys in the United States. So that's how the West became so strong after the Roman collapse. Exactly, precisely. That's what happened. Todd says, did I just use unflattering terms for that tribe? How dare you? Well, you know, you're talking about people who just got it into their head that they got to snip their own dicks. I mean, at birth, with their teeth. Yeah. Biden was just an animatronic at the debates. I haven't watched a single minute of that shit. I never have and probably never will. And Todd says Biden's soul has been dead for quite some time. Indeed. And Zenostar thinks she saw a screenshot of that video on 4chan. Yeah, I have no need to look at that shit. It's fucking nightmare fuel, and I know enough about that stuff already that I really don't need any more convincing. Instinctive Bear says, do you know anything about Father Morrison in San Francisco who does a pre-Vatican II Latin Mass there every Sunday? No, I don't know, but you have to be a little bit careful because there are some Novus Ordo priests who do Latin Mass, but they're still Novus Ordo priests. So interesting to go and watch, but I wouldn't take the sacraments from such a priest. Fake priest. And Jordan James says, if you only knew how bad it really is a big meme on 4chan. Yeah, I was aware of this long before 4chan existed. Okay, I'm on record on this since my mid-20s. Since the Clintons, really. I was well aware of the Clintons being absolutely evil pieces of shit in the mid-90s, in the early 90s. And I was going around telling everybody, look, these guys are fucking the worst creatures possible. Or the fact that the George Bush family, the original, the father, but probably also the son, they fucking hunted people. They had sex slaves, the whole MK Ultra shit. You know, not all of that is all going to be 100% true as it was, but there was a book called Trance, like a hypnotic trance, Transformation America. It's written by a lady that was one of these sex slaves, and she kind of managed to get out of it, and she's been very vociferous about it since. And it's like, no one's ever denied that anything that this woman said is real, but just, again, like Jimmy Savile, abused hundreds of dying kids and just gets swept under the carpet. this is not going to go away. That's why I keep saying burning people at the stake. I'm not joking about that. The pedophiles need to be burnt at the stake. That's eventually, if any of us win, if there is going to be any Catholic communities, burning people at the stake, I think there's a very good chance that makes a comeback. And if I become Dojo Venice, I guarantee it. It might be one of my, bullet points for this is what I'm aiming for. Let justice be done though the heavens fall. Well, funnily enough, I just had a little tete-a-tete with Tom Crantman on his page on Facebook, because he was saying, oh, well, we can't really arrest all these people. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Not like this. It was very polite exchange. I'm giving you my emotional response to it now. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Oh, we can't arrest all of them because fuck arresting them. It's like, oh, because, you can't. Every time that, let's say Trump wins and he takes out all the evil people like Hillary and that puts them in jail, well, that would set a precedent that every time a politician comes into power, he does that to the other people who lost power. I'm like, this has got nothing to do with power. This has got to do with the fact that those people are child-raping, murdering, evil pieces of shit, and they need to burn. And he's like, oh, well, that's an easy thing to say, but what when the sky falls and the sky is made of lead because that's what's happening? No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is you don't even know where your enemies are. Because I tell you now that if I was Trump, if I'd become president of the United States, there's no fucking way I would have gone about it the way he's done. I would have done exactly the Putin way. I would have got rid of the swamp. And I would have got rid of the swamp by any and all means available to me. People would have been fucking suiciding left, right, and center, leaving the country, running away, getting thrown in jail. It would have been a very quick cleanup. And I wouldn't give a flying fuck. Do you think that Putin is worried about people saying, but he had some guy killed with polonium? You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. What are you going to do? Putin can sit there and go, I have no knowledge of that. None. I do not know. Maybe he had some bad sushi. Lost all his hair, died. Ah, tragedy. Fuck you. What are you going to do? You got to get rid of the evil people. Now, there's very few men on earth that have got the ability to get rid of evil people without themselves becoming evil, fucking scheming egomaniacs. That whole thing of like, don't stare into the abyss because the abyss also stares into you. I've always disagreed with that line. I'm not built that way. The abyss can try and stare into me. It ain't going to get purchased there. But that doesn't mean that I'm unwilling to do some pretty nasty shit if I have to, to protect the people I love, to protect the reality, the truth, the justice, or even an innocent little kid. Why wouldn't you be able to, slit a throat, burn somebody on fire in the middle of the public square, change the law so that you can burn him on fire in the middle of the public square if he rapes a little kid? Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you be able to put the torch to the guy's fucking feet once that law's in place? You need to be able to do that, So, and if you're not built that way, then be a monk that prays. Be somebody that helps. Be somebody that carries water. If you're not the type to hold the shield and fire fucking spears on the front line, then be the guy that feeds those people. Be the guy that straightens out the bent spears when they come back, whatever. Why didn't Samuel get a special lead treat from his parent? Well, first of all, because no parents here have got guns. And also, the parents here just like, England is extremely regulated, extremely controlled. We've got cameras on every corner. So if as a parent you're going to do that, you are definitely going to go to jail or get killed. Which, if you do that to one of my kids, I don't give a fuck. I'll go to jail. Maybe I'll get shot by cops, whatever. But the guy who did that, he ain't going far. And if they catch him before I get to him, when he comes out, he ain't going far. I don't give a fuck. Same like the guy in Italy, some guy in Italy that some priest, some fake Novus Ordo priest molested these two sisters, and one of them, these two girls, I don't know if they were sisters, one of them killed herself, and the other one's, is not in good shape. The guy got 15 years. 2 days after he came out of jail, he was found dead, shot in the face. And I think they might try to have arrested somebody, but I hope that conversation, that, I mean, if I was tasked with arresting that guy, I'd make such a sloppy fucking job of it. I'd be like, evidence, gun, no, we didn't find anything. It was the girl's father. What, the gun residue on his hands? Yeah, we did the test. It got lost. No, You know what I mean? If you're a decent cop, that's what you need to do. Because again, I go back to Nazism. Oh, but it's the law. You have to follow the law. Guess what? It was the law under Nazi Germany that, you had to throw a little kid in the fucking fire just because he was Jewish. You gonna follow those orders? You gonna murder like defenseless men, women, and children because you're told to? Fuck that. I'm gonna God's law above all. I don't give a flying fuck what governments say. I never have. I never will. Even if I have to become part of government to change that shit. That's the whole point, right? Dropper says that he's late, but glad to see everybody. Xenostart says, sad Pepe, then righteously angry Pepe. I think that's the frog, the cake frog. And, Novente Leonson, or to make a reference to the face on Mars, let justice be done, though the heavens fall. Yeah. I am pretty much of that line. And Jordan James says, the whole conspiracy world only makes sense through the lens of a Christian worldview. The path has become so much clearer. Absolutely. Absolutely. But also, I would also disagree, because I was a so-called conspiracy theorist long before I came anywhere near Christianity. And that's because factually, observably, that's what it is. I mean, I don't know why people don't see it. I think probably, again, IQ problem, but David Perkins says, with the amount of pedo heresy coming from the demon pope, do you see trend Catholics coming over to the set-aside? They are. They're coming to the set-aside in droves. It's just like, it's like the mainstream media thing, right? I mean, in France, the Yellow Jackets have been fucking revolting for over a year. How much of that have you seen on the news? For like a fucking year, these people, every weekend, every day, they've been like rioting, like protesting peacefully or whatever they've been doing on almost every city in France. Do you see that on the news? What do you think, that the Novos Orchians are going to advertise it? I mean, we're a tiny, insignificant splinter group of schismatics, according to Bergoglio, but, he's making sure that there's a whole bunch of people fucking telling the world that. Why do you think that is? Just quietly go about your business and keep converting people. That's it. Don't need to make a big show about it. Just keep doing it. That's what it's about. Drop Bear says, it's exactly like Nicole Kidman's dad here in Oz. That stuff is wicked. Hunting people and sex slaves. Horrible stuff. Okay, I don't know anything about Nicole Kidman's dad, but, she's an actress, so I expect. Xenostart says that Putin is my favorite world leader. Mine too. And if you've seen the speeches that guy gives, he doesn't fucking mince words. Again, do you see that? I mean, you've got one of the world leaders of one of the most powerful countries on earth telling you that there's that the globalists are trying to like polarize countries and to make it all one big global world. And it's like, no, why can't you just let people govern themselves? Why can't you let every country be its own country? Let Russia be Russia, let Italy be Italy, let England be England. No, they want to try and make it all one thing, And Todd says, if every last pedo burns and there's a power vacuum, the vacuum will be filled by something better. Well, yeah, I mean, you can't get much lower than a fucking pedophile. David Perkins says, pedo slaughter is a good precedent to set. Exactly, which is why the Democrats right now are running scared. They're running scared. They're all involved. They're all fucking dirty. That stuff that's coming out with Pelosi's son doing the same shit. Pelosi's son was taking the same fucking money by the Chinese, giving it to his mummy, and when his girlfriend, who had 4 kids, found out, he broke up with her and then had child protection services take her kids away. This is how these people work. They're the scum of the earth. Xenostart says in Minecraft, oh, Roblox. I prefer Roblox just because one of my kids plays it. Todd Jana says, I trust the Kurgan as the Grand Inquisitor. Look, you know, and NB, all above strictly in Minecraft or Roblox. Apparently Roblox is also just as good. But you know, at the same time, you also got to stop being scared to saying, you know, fucking Minecraft, Roblox. At the same time, you know, I'm just observing what history has done before and what's coming again, one way or another. Oh, Dances with Logos is here. Hello. And Putin also has a great sense of humor, but in an honest way that, like you said, speaks what needs to be said. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you see some of the interviews with Putin, they're brilliant. They're hilarious. That's why they're not fucking putting him everywhere. Imagine if what Putin actually said at the UN meetings about the globalists like came out, or what he said about the Muslim refugees that were trying to force on Russia came out. You know, you got to go on YouTube and find some guy's thing to see it, and then like, oh, the translation underneath, you know, because they're scared. If normal human beings were suddenly faced with the truth of what's really been going on by the people that are their so-called leaders, they would literally hang them from lampposts the next day. Okay? An average, normal, non-violent father of three that sees what these people are up to would literally be torches and fucking pitchforks. Okay? It would be doing that. And that's why the Q thing, people say, oh, the Q people are Q-tards. No. Q is a massive psyops. It was very cleverly done because it managed to trickle this information gradually into the back mind of at least a portion of the population. It was a brilliant psyops. Yeah, maybe it's not all correct. Yeah, maybe they didn't get it all through or whatever. But that's even better because then the enemy doesn't know exactly how you're moving, you know? So a bit of confusion is always part of a psyops anyway. And Dropper saying the conspiracies are real makes you into a Christian, not the other way around. No, it can go either way. Vox is one of those people that saw the evil and that convinced him to become a Christian. I spiritually sort of became a Christian before. I mean, I've always known there was evil there, but it's just I hadn't connected the dots. And then when I had my road to Damascus moments, I was like, oh, all that evil shit that I've been seeing everywhere. Oh, now I get where it comes from, you know. So no, it can go either way. But for most people, I would say that, yeah, seeing the level of evil makes them sort of take pause and sort of go, well, maybe there's something to this like good versus evil thing, you know. Yeah. And he continues to say, then it's always interesting that people state that you only believe in creationism because of your faith. No, you know, again, I was just looking at my little son playing today, and I was like, that's not just a random accumulation of atoms that happens by a chance. You know, there is an obvious creator. On some level, it's always been obvious to me, looking at sunsets, nature, because I was lucky enough to grow up pretty, you know, wild. So there was always an element of the mystic in me, which saved me because I've never taken the ticket, even when I was nowhere near any kind of Christian or Catholic or anything. Who would you trust more as a babysitter, Putin or Trump? It's a tough question for my kids. I think Putin, because I think Trump might get distracted, but I think Putin would understand, you know, after you shook his hand, said, okay, you're going to babysit my kids. Thanks, Vlad. Or, you know, thanks, Donald. In that handshake, Putin would understand that if something happens to one of my kids, despite all his security, despite all his KGB super spies and all that shit, he would have a problem on his hands. Donald might not be as able to perceive the reality of that in that handshake. That's what I think. Otorki Bear says, yes, return the heads on pikes. And Woolly Ram's still here, cool. The Slavic and East European humor is cutting and delightfully understated. It is, it's very funny. It's extremely funny. Fuck Boris Johnson, he's a fat slob, he can burn in Roblox too. Boris Johnson was, he was involved with Ghislaine Maxwell. They were like boyfriend and girlfriend or some shit in their earlier days. So, and Jordan says he was also knee-deep in conspiracies before becoming Christian. Yeah, they're not conspiracy theories. They're conspiracy facts, you know. I saw a video of Putin, this is Xenostart, I saw a video of Putin letting an orphan come up to him and talk with him. I think he's good with kids. Don't get me wrong, there's a certain element of propaganda, right? This will put the perspective on it, like one of my Russian friends, right? Because you see Putin walk through the crowd, you know, people come up to him, and you know, I know how the game is played because I used to be in that sort of, you know, high level sort of personal protection shit. And I said, you know, I think it's brilliant the way Russians do stuff, because when Bill Clinton came to South Africa, they literally shut down the whole fucking city an hour before he came through with this little 400 car motorcade. You had like Marines on every corner with weapons and shit. And it's like, dude, you know, the average South African is like, we don't give a fuck about you, your politics, or your fucking American president. Go fuck yourselves. You're stopping me in traffic. You know, go away. And I said, like, Putin would never do that, you know, and he doesn't do that. And even in the States, you know, the president of the United States has got a shitload of protection around him, whatever. The Russian leader just kind of goes there and says, hi, how's things? But that's because he's got some serious fucking guys that you don't even realize are there, you know, and my friend said, of course, because, you know, the American president is a leader that is there by force, but our president is loved by the people. And it was a pretty sarcastic comment, meaning, you know, whether you love him or not, you're gonna love him. You're gonna sit there and clap, you know. Yeah, and I think it's a more honest and direct way of doing things. Woolly Ram says 85 IQ. The world is created. 165 IQ. A creator is necessary and sufficient for the glory we behold. Yeah, you know, it's what I was saying the other day about the curve. It's exactly what I was saying the other day. You got, you know, the retard on one end and the super genius at the other end, and they both agree. It's the midwits that are the problem. Xenostart says propaganda. Fair point. I wondered about the security of it. Still think he's good with kids. Yeah, I think Putin is a good guy. Let's say he's a guy after my own heart. Calling him a good guy is probably a bridge too far, but you know what I mean. Guy Jean TV says spiritual order, God and Christ over man, man over woman, woman over children. Thoughts? Sounds a little bit like your Owen Benjamin little loophole there, but you know, yeah, God leads man, man leads woman. I wouldn't necessarily say that woman leads child, because I see that with my own kids. Like my wife keeps repeating to me about my little barbarian, which has been nicknamed Conan the Venetian by the Dreadil, how he's just like fucking doesn't listen. I mean, he's pretty naughty, kind of fights me as well. He's very headstrong, but at the same time, he knows that with dad, it's like when I give him the proper dad look, and he's like, just wanders off. And he's got some really hilarious mannerisms. One of them is that sometimes he just walks around with his hands behind his back, like, you know, a little bit of a Mussolini stride, like looking around at his realm. He's hilarious. And so I can see, you know, that he's going to be, you know, he's going to be taught to respect his mother, of course, because I'm his dad. But I can see, you know, in his teens, he's probably going to be like, yes, mom. Okay, mom. Whatever, mom. You know, but he'll probably fucking do whatever he's got in his head anyways. It takes both. It takes mother and father to raise children. You both have to be there. And if you're not, then what kind of parent are you? What kind of father are you? Watching Putin walk, the guy's a total alpha and he moves like a fighter. Yeah, Putin has got a couple of black belts, and fair enough that he, if you're gonna do judo with Putin, you're probably gonna let him win just in case some polonium doesn't find its way into your sushi or whatever. But I think it's also genuine. Putin. Remember that Putin was a KGB guy. Yeah, he was head of the KGB or some departments. I don't remember the details, but he was a full-on KGB guy. And I'm telling you, I know this because I've trained with some of these people. All KGB guys, all KGB officers, they've all had some pretty intense training of one kind or another, especially in psychology. So, but then again, the Russian martial arts don't forget about psychology. Unlike the so-called Japanese or Western martial arts that don't even really discuss it. The psychology of fighting is embedded in the Russian way of thinking. So, that guy has had time on a mat, no doubt about it. And Zenostart says, did you see him talking with Obama and how though he was shorter, he didn't move his head up to look at him? Only his eyes. Total alpha. I don't know. I haven't really... there's different ways to be... and depends what you're trying to transmit, I'm the kind of guy that, if I had to talk to some evil motherfucker, maybe I would look up at him and go, oh, you're so big. And that means that I'm now within arm's reach. My arm's reach, not yours. So, yeah, I thought that was Benito for a second. He doesn't look like... no, I'm not related to Mussolini at all, despite the bald head. But his granddaughter has made waves occasionally in Italy, and I think there may well be a little bit of a comeback. You got to understand also that what you think history is, just like I was saying about the Unz Review and Hitler's response to Roosevelt, what you think is the history of the world is not. That's just the narrative that you've been presented. I was the other day. My wife brought me to this bookshop where they sell books as well as a bunch of other crap, where they had everything on special, and I bought a shitload of book. I bought a bag full of books which I'd never have the time to read. It's probably going to take me a couple of years to get through them, but it cost me £29. And if I'd bought those books at full price, it would have probably been about 200. And this is one of them that I just got, and I just literally read the first chapter of it. I also bought one on the Templars, but it was a complete crappy book, which I skimmed through it because all the stuff in there I already know. There's no new information. It was pretty poor effort. And this is also relatively basic, but it gives an insight into people that I knew only necessarily not a lot of stuff about. Some of them I didn't know quite details of it. And I wanted to also compare what I knew against this and so on. And it's very interesting, Benito Mussolini was loved by his people for a great part of it. Now, he was an egomaniac and kind of a fraudulent and a thief and so on. But you got to keep in mind that Italy has always been such a shit show that whenever you get a leader that actually gets some shit done, just that is such a surprise that everybody's like, well, fuck, the trains still don't run on time, but at least we've got trains, And it was the same thing with that other complete cretin. What's his name? The guy that was all over the newspapers with his with a hard on, in doing some orgies with the young girls, and I don't know if they were underage or not, but they were definitely very young prostitutes and stuff. I forget. That's how much I care about politics. Berlusconi, that idiot. again, people were like, you know, he's scum. The guy is scum. He like mafia money. It was like complete scum. Everybody knew it. But here's the way that I'll explain it to you. I was born in Italy, and then I left when I was 4 years old, and I was there when I was 7, 8, and then I came back and forth on holidays and shit. Throughout that period of time, between the ages of 40 and 30, whenever I went back to the town I was born in, and I looked through the main city square, it was always the same crappy, shitty, unpainted, fallen to bits buildings. Berlusconi came into power, and for the first time I went back on holiday, it's like, what the fuck happened here? They gave it a new coat of paint. They actually cleaned some shit up. Whoa, what's going on? Oh, it's Berlusconi. And even I, who knew what scummy was, I was like, well, you see, what you got to keep in mind is all the other guys that were there before him, they weren't any better. I mean, one of those guys ran off to Libya with all the pension fund, literally. You know, we're talking about fucking corner shop thieves. They were, and they kept changing government every 3 months because it's like, well, it's your turn now. Well, I made a shitload of money. Now it's my turn. Oh, well, we got to keep you going, you know. They were all scum. At least this motherfucker painted the buildings again. He's stealing just as much as everybody else or more, but at least he painted the buildings. You know, that's kind of your average Italian take on politicians. So with Benito Mussolini, same shit, you know, because you got to keep in mind, Italy has never been a country, never will be. It's 21 little countries shoved together and told, oh, you're all the same. No, we're not. Try and tell a Venetian that he's the same like a Calabrese. They're both going to stab you before they start stabbing each other. LS16 Heinz G says, thoughts on how the church will handle the US collapse. At what point would they recognize the new authority and entities that arise from the ashes? Which church are you talking about? The Catholic Church has never concerned itself with the so-called politicians. The Catholic Church used to make the leaders, and vice versa. The leaders used to make the popes. That's historically, you know, emperors put popes in power, and popes demoted or promoted various emperors. That was the dynamic. You know, Catholicism, what happened is once the papal states got sold out, which happened under fascism, happened under Benito Mussolini, you know, like the papacy, the papal states began to shrunk, and then it became just the Vatican. Because before that, the laws and so on of the Vatican applied to the papal states. So Italy, in large part, for much of its history, was under Catholic law. So that's not a bad way to be. I'd go back to that in a flash if I could. And David Perkins says, little kids are amazing in how much personality they have. I remember my 3-year-old brother politely shouldering other kids out of the way. Oh, yeah. No, my little dude is like, he's got like a sumo wrestler's fucking shove. You know, he like literally opens doors with one hand, boom. This was already months ago. And he's not even a year and a half old, really. And he's got the shove of death. And now when he plays with his sisters, I mean, she's 5, you know, he's like 1.5. He like grabs her by like her clothes and just like drags her around. And they play pretty rough, both of them. But I reckon give him another 6 months and he's going to be able to like hold his own, you know, even though she's quite a lot bigger. He's strong. He's really strong. He could do pull-ups at like 9 months. He was like picking himself up, like grab the edge of the table and then like, eee! To see what's on top, you know. It's like, he's a freaky little guy. And I reckon he's going to be 6'4" minimum by the time he's grown 2 centimeters a month every month since he was born. You know, for the first 6 months, I thought I was measuring wrong. I was like, what the fuck? You can't be growing 2 centimeters a month. That's like a centimeter every 2 weeks. And now, because we had the other one, you know, my wife's been basically looking after the baby the whole time. I've been looking after the other 2. And the other day, she changed him again for a while. I've been doing everything for like a week or so, or whatever it is. I don't know. I lost track of time. And she was like, oh my God, he's like big. His hands are huge. You know, his butt. I was like, yeah. You know, you literally notice, even as a parent, and you're there with them all day, within a week of you not like being physically in contact with him the whole time, you like realize, fuck, he's just gained another couple of centimeters. He's gonna be massive, I think. He's got a really good character. I really like his character. According to at least 2 Catholic mystics, Mussolini is in heaven, so it's true anyone can make it. Well, yeah, I don't necessarily think that that's untrue, you know. Purgatory is there for a reason. Woolly Ram says, making silly faces at kids is an unalienable right. Yeah, unless it's a creepy, funny face, and then, you know. Oh yeah, Berlusconi, that's it, yeah, sorry. See, Woolly Ram, an American slash part original Jew and now become Catholic, wanting to be anyway, knows more about Italian politics, politicians, should I say, than I do. I know quite a bit about the actual politics, but it's a dirty business. Hey, Kurgan, why do you think the Borgias aren't considered anti-popes? Because they weren't. The Borgias were what we call, again, Rodney Stark coined a very useful term, Church of Power and Church of Piety. The Borgias were definitely Church of Power people, but they didn't fuck with the dogma. They didn't try and change Catholicism. You know, they had nepotism. They made their own nephews and sons and illegitimate children that they had as popes and whatever. They made them cardinals and promoted them to become emperors, whatever. They did all that power-hungry shit. But they didn't say, we're going to change the Lord's Prayer, which Bergoglio has. They didn't say, oh, yeah, homosexuality, not a sin, which is what Bergoglio's done. Bergoglio is the worst pope in the entire history of Catholicism. And keep in mind that we've had popes that were doing sodomite orgies throughout their whole fucking papacy. Bergoglio is the worst. There's no single pope ever in the history of all the popes. And by the way, I have read a book by a guy who's dead now, forgot his name, who wrote The Popes. I've read all that, and I've then read individually about certain popes as well. Bergoglio is absolutely the worst anti-pope that has ever happened to the Catholic Church. So they didn't change Catholicism. They were busy raping and pillaging for their own benefit. That doesn't mean you're not a valid pope. Again, because people confuse it, thinking that Catholics think that the Pope is a saint and perfect and infallible. No. That's why I keep telling you guys, listen, I know it sounds like I'm just, read the fucking book. It explains these things. It explains what papal infallibility is. It explains what papal primacy is in a way that is easy to understand. It explains what the Catholic Church really is, because you don't know. You honest to God don't know. I didn't know. You know, I spent years reading about this stuff before I put this together. I didn't just come up with it and say, I'm going to do some research like Tate Marshall. I'm going to write Infiltration. That's a nice title. And then just spew some shit that... No. No. You got to keep in mind that, again, one of my better skills, pattern recognitions and synthesizing a lot of information quickly. And I have read and studied and whatever the Catholic Church obsessively since 2013. You know, that's 7 years of pretty hardcore, intense reading and studying and figuring it out. And that's the distillation of all that. I write a book, and I only write a nonfiction book once I've sort of pretty much come to the conclusion that, okay, I've got all the parameters and I've filled in pretty much everything there is to fill in. Then I write a nonfiction book. So, Woolly Rams. Oh, sorry, I've lost a view. Let me go back a bit. LS16 says, as I understand it, the Catholic Church recognizes civil authorities hold civil authority from God, and people are morally bound to follow the civil law so long as it does not contradict church law. Yeah, sure. That is, unless the country is actually Catholic, in which case Catholic law applies. You know, that whole recognizes civil authority, yeah, but that's, you know, give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. That's where that comes from. That doesn't mean that you necessarily obey all the laws of a secular government that is not Catholic. You don't. That's why the Pope had a lot of power when it was, when Catholicism was still Catholicism, because all he'd have to do is tell the Catholics, non serviam, we don't serve, don't vote. And then that guy doesn't get into power because the whole country was fucking Catholic back then. So, a Catholic state, a Catholic city-state is the preferable and I believe optimal option for human beings. I believe that the city-states are the optimum form of government, because bigger than that, it's too big. Smaller than that, you're a little tribe. So I believe city-states are the optimal form of government. And in city-states, you can then have whatever form of government you want. And I believe that the Catholic city-states would be the ideal form of government. But the thing about having city-states is that you can have the blue-haired freaks that want to have fat bodies. They can have their own city-state. There's no need for us to mix. You can be over there in your city-state and do whatever freaky shit you want there. Don't come into my city-state. If you do come in here as a guest, you behave by our rules. And if I go to your freaky shitty state, then I behave by your rules. It's a very human, efficient way of living. And Gajin says, love the children's stories. Congrats and God bless you and your family. Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of them. Woolly Ram says, my little brother gave my parents a few gray hair by building a staircase out of kitchen drawers with the knives still in them. Oh, yeah, he does that regularly. He's been doing that since he was 9 months old. So, and plus, honestly, the guy is so curious, and anything that can be like pulled apart or put together, he will do the first and then attempt the second. And sometimes he'll try and put shit together that doesn't belong. But he loves being helpful, and if you show him like how to build stuff, he happily like wants to help you and get involved. So yeah, no, he's a cool little guy. But didn't the Borgias have orgies in the Vatican as well? Chris Govey animation. Again, Chris, let me explain this very simply. For a pope to have an orgy in the Vatican, that doesn't affect the dogma of the church. It affects him. It means he may well be going to hell for mortal sin and being a hypocrite and all sorts of shit. But it doesn't change Catholicism. You can say he's a bad pope, sure. Doesn't mean that he's not a legitimate pope. There's been plenty of those. Plenty of bad and yet legitimate popes. Plenty of them. Anti-popes are those who are not Catholic. Anti-popes are those who are pretending to be Catholics. Anti-popes were the ones that have deemed to have not been legitimate for whatever reason. Being a freak doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't a pope. And Zenostar says, even the public information on Bergoglio is enough to see he is evil. Absolutely. Willful ignorance at best and complicity at worst for those who deny it. Absolutely. That's it. Jean Dortal says, I've never understood why people can't understand the difference between an immoral Catholic and a non-Catholic. I know, but that's because Protestants, everything has been seeped into Protestantism. The we've had bad popes before argument is retarded. Yes, it's absolutely retarded. A bad pope is still a pope. A non-pope is not a pope. It's like saying, well, we got a bad basketball player. That guy has never scored a goal. Yeah, but he's on the team and he's part of the team. And then you've got Tiger Woods running onto the basketball court naked. And you're saying, well, we've had bad basketball players before. That's not a fucking basketball player. He's not part of the team. He's never played basketball. He's a golfer. And he's naked. Not part of the team. Not a basketball player. Right? The same thing. How big would you state a city-state should be? The size of a small city. Venice had a huge amount of influence and owned a lot of land. Pardon me, it's late here, so I'm probably going to end soon. But it wasn't, so a city-state could control a pretty big region, but the actual governance of that whole region is done in that city. The Doge lived in that city. The Doge was elected by people that lived in that city, and that's how it should be, and that's how it should stay. Invariably, you're going to get things that, go wrong, whatever, one way or another. But David Perkins says Bishop Sanborn has a video listing all of the heresies of the current Pope. It was pretty brutal. Yeah, and I'm sure he's right. Impossible to hear that stuff and think the guy's anything less than a Satanist. He is a full-on Satanist. Wooly Ram says leftoids are not willing to live and let live. If they're willing, I would still be a heathen. Yeah, of course. But that's the whole point. The leftoids are not going to have city-states. They will have reservations, because the Catholics who do form city-states, that's why it has to be a citadel, protected. There you form your community. There you protect your community. And if need be, you physically, literally build walls around your little community. Why not? That prevents the infiltration. Now, the next step that you have to, one of the key steps, and I'm sorry I should have mentioned it before, but one of the key steps that you have to have once you've got your little citadel, your little mini group of Catholics, your proto-Catholic village, you have to be brutal about who you allow inside the city walls, real or metaphorical as they may be. And you eject brutally, without any doubt, anyone who does not fit the parameters. We've had that here in London with the whole, Bishop Sanborn and some other people and whatever. Oh, but I'm a Catholic, I'm a trad Catholic, whatever. And those of us that are like myself, we've said, no, if you want to be part of our little group, you've got to be a proper Catholic. That means that you do not accept an una cum mass. You've got to be a non-una cum. In other words, when they say the mass, they cannot refer to any of the anti-popes as being with the mass. That's heresy. So get the fuck out. And there was people that had been, coming to mass or whatever, saying, oh, but, we have to be a bit more inclusive. We're like, no, fuck off. Go away. Most of the Catholics, they're not like me. They're extremely polite, generous, friendly, good people. Really good people. They're not like me. I wouldn't classify myself as anywhere near as good as they are. And yet, they were standing shoulder to shoulder with me saying, no, you don't get to be here. You have to take a stand. Remember that saying, all that evil has to succeed is that good men do nothing. So, yeah. And Xenostart says, Woolly Ram, I just wanted to play video games. That's a reference to Gamergate, for those of you who don't know. Oh yeah, and Chris Covea says to David Perkins, if you can share the link to the Bishop Sanborn video, please do. Yeah, David Perkins, if you need to take a couple of minutes to find it, please do it and put it on here, because I did find out, by the way, you can see the live chat on the videos afterwards. I just have to make sure that it's like the setting is right on my side, and then I think it plays. Gaijin TV says, Domo arigato, Kurgen Sensei. Thanks for sharing your insight. You're welcome. Thomas Trani says, my kids recently said to me that they heard a priest say Joe Biden is not a good Catholic. I then proceeded to explain why that priest is wrong, because Biden is not even Catholic in the first place. Correct. Very good, Tom. Tom, I hope you don't mind, but I've mentioned you a few times that you're the man to get in contact with in Pennsylvania to become a proper Catholic community. Some people may be willing to move there pretty soon, or already on the way. Yeah, and as Woolly Ram reminds us all, as I've said before, how much filth are you willing to put in your ice cream? Exactly that. I don't want one una cum guy in my little Catholic community. Not one. And if I'm going to go somewhere and start another one, it's going to stay the same. And you know what? There is I think it was Mark Twain that said that, like, Reasonable men adapt, I'm paraphrasing. Reasonable men adapt to the world and survive and whatever. The unreasonable man, because he's unreasonable, forces the world to adapt to him. Therefore, all progress is made by unreasonable men. And that's pretty much true. Stick to your guns. Because that's why these psychotic evil fucks got into power in the first place. Because they're psychotic, evil, narcissistic fucks, and all they care about is what they care about, so they push through everybody else. And I've seen this in captains of industry, I've seen this in various different things. You got to be the same. You've got to be a zealot. And it's like, no, Catholic or get the fuck out. And this type of Catholic or get the fuck out. And no, if you're veering a little bit, fuck off. You're not one of us. You've got to be like that. You stick to your guns like that, eventually you're going to get people that come near and say, hey, I agree with you. And even just in this little community, we've got quite a few guys here. I know that right now, I've never met the guy. I don't know what he looks like. But I know for a fact that Zenos Dart could be my neighbor and we'd get on famously. Even if we were disagreeing about everything else. Why? Because just from looking at what he does online and following a little bit of here and there, I can see he's a zealot. David Perkins, another one. I don't know these people. I don't know these people from a bar of soap. Nikoto Bear, he's still like making his decision, but he would be there as well. Woolly Ram. And I'm just a guy talking on the internet, right? But I'm telling you right now, Tom, Dances with Logos, all of these people, I would be happy to have them as my neighbor tomorrow. And this is the beginning. This is how it starts. Because eventually, we keep growing, keep sending people here. They'll eventually kick me off this, and then we'll go to BitChute or something else. Doesn't matter. Just keep growing. And by the way, I'm relying on you guys also to keep it pumping because I'm really curious. I think YouTube has been unsubscribing people and shadow banning me and whatever, but they haven't kicked me off yet, which I'm pretty surprised about. They may soon enough. The Gammas may well try and do that. I don't know. But I don't care. There's things in place already for that. But I want to see if we can break the 2,000 subscriber barrier because I think they're artificially keeping it below that. It just hasn't moved in like quite a few months now, and it's like that's not how these things go. It's not organic. So, mind you, I also, because you've got to keep refining it, right? I also do videos sometimes where the one where I said like how to help Protestants become Christians. That pissed a bunch of Protestants off, so some people will leave, and there is that. And I do that on purpose. Why? Because again, I want the cream of the crop. Remember, all retards left behind. I only want the cream of the crop. Because I'd rather have 1,000 guys that like all on the same page. That's a force. That's a powerful, powerful group of people. I don't want 200,000 people that are just like, cool, LOL. Oh, he said a funny thing. I don't give a shit about that. And again, I'm not monetizing this. This is not about making money. This is about you guys and creating something in the physical world that makes sense for you, for your kids, for your grandkids, and mine. I'm not just doing this for no reason, for everybody else. I'm doing it for me too, But that's what it is. It's I gave the link. Please finish the Grand Inquisitor stream before leaving. I don't know what that means. David, I don't think I've seen the link pop up. So can you put the link in the chat if you can, David Perkins? Put the link to that video. Oh, he says here, but I don't see the link. Is that showing anything? I don't know. It just shows here. I don't see a link, David. So maybe you need to put that in there. Or maybe the stream has to end before before you can see it. I'm not sure. Tom says he doesn't mind at all, so long as everyone can pray for the hastening of the rest of my family's coming to the sed vacantis conclusion. Please and thank you. Yeah, well, we all have to pray for each other, I mean, I'm the only one in my family that's even, that even calls himself Catholic of any kind, So, yeah, but get in touch with Tom if you want to go to Pennsylvania, or if you want to move. That apparently it's a really good spot. I am in the proto stages of starting something somewhere else as well, so I'll give you a bit more info on that once a bit more movement on that. I gave the link. Okay. Zenostart says, I've always wanted a code to follow, clearly set out, with consequences and rewards both, so I know exactly where I stand. Catholicism brings that clarity. Absolutely. And I gotta say, I've been a little bit the same. That's why I was kind of following the whole Japanese Zen agnostic martial arts stuff for many years. Because it was clear, simple. Catholicism is like that. It's clear and simple. You want to make it complicated and get into the nitty-gritty, you can spend your life studying that stuff. But, at basis, you can be a good Catholic and not even know to read. It really is quite simple to follow. Rogan's up SVP. Yeah, we don't really use those terminologies, but thank you, Gaijin TV. I appreciate it. Jean Dural says, I understand the argument about una cum, but I disagree that it automatically invalidates the Mass. It's a good rule of thumb for vetting a priest, but I don't think it's a dogmatic issue. It is a dogmatic issue. You are linking a heretic who is not a Catholic with the most sacred of the sacraments. The most... the sacrifice that Jesus Christ made, which saved everybody, you're linking that to a faker who's pretending to be one of us in order to corrupt the church. Why on earth would you do that? No. Any priest that does that is not a priest. He's not a proper priest. He's either criminally incompetent at best, and he can't be, because if he's a sede priest, he can't be that incompetent. Or he is an infiltrator. So no, it's not it's a rule of thumb. No. Jean Durtal, if that's what you believe, you would not be part of the people that have Mass with me. Okay? And I'm making that very clear specifically because you need to be clear yourself. You need to choose a side. There is no gray area with Catholicism. You're either in or you're not in. There is no we can do this little bit. No. You can do all sorts of wrong shit and still be a Catholic, and you've done wrong shit and you may well go to hell for it. But there are there's also two sets of rules with Catholicism. There are the human rules for the church in order to be able to to what's best for people, what's best for the church as an organization. These are all worldly rules which you should follow anyway. But then there are divine rules. There are certain divine rules you do not break. You don't piss on the cup that you take the Holy Mass from. No. That is absolute, complete heresy. So, Woolly Ram says, you never appear in recommend listings. I think only subscribers see your videos. Yeah, I've checked the stats, and most of the people that come to the videos are from Google searches. They're not from recommendations or anything. So yeah, I know. Only moderators can post links. Oh, thanks, Slapweasel. You can post links in the comments after the live stream. Okay, please, David, do that if you can, because I'd like that link as well. And if you're on Social Galactic, yeah, please also post it there. I think David is on Social Galactic. And if you're not on Social Galactic yet, if you're one of the guys listening here and you're not on Social Galactic yet, join. It's like, whatever, $5 a month to be subscribing for unauthorized or something. And you get to join Social Galactic automatically. And I'm not sure what the details are. I'm not sure if you can join Social Galactic just by asking, or if there's another fee you pay some. I don't know. I don't actually know. But Woolly Ram says, Jen, una cum with heretics is expressly forbidden, ever more so when the heretics are usurpers of the physical Catholic legacy. There you go. I'll post it in the links in the comments. Don't want to derail. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Jean Dortal says, we've had an older priest who didn't know any better. He did it at first, but then stopped after he learned better. Okay, That's fine. He's now learned better, but that priest was obviously, I'm guessing, a Novus Ordo priest. A Novus Ordo priest is not a priest of the Catholic Church. If he's in his 90s, maybe he was an actual priest, but then priests that have become heretics should have no say over anybody, should have no authority over anyone. A priest that has become a heretic, who then returns back to the Catholic Church, by canon law, all that he can do after that is spend the rest of his days in atonement in a monastery, praying. That's it. He shouldn't give the Mass, he shouldn't give the sacraments. He literally has to spend the rest of his life in penance so that he has authority over no one. So that priest that you're going to, I understand, maybe that's all you can do, maybe that's the best you can do, but that ain't a proper priest. And David Perkins says, Mass with a fake Pope is like Mass with Aleister Crowley. Probably not a good idea. Okay, so he was ordained in the 1950s. That's fair enough. Was it 1959? You know, fine. Let's say he was ordained in 1954, and therefore he is a valid priest. Then my question to you is, why do you think he is not a persistent, notorious heretic now? You have to keep in mind canon law. Again, please, guys, if you don't want to go through the canon law yourself and you want the shortcut, this is the shortcut. Yes, it's 530 pages, but this is the shortcut to Catholicism as it actually is. It is canonical law that if you accept a known persistent heretic as being a Catholic instead of a heretic, you yourself become a heretic. Canon 188 part 4 is based on cum ex apostolato officio, which is the papal encyclical that describes in exacting detail who does and does not become a heretic, when and how. And this is part of canon law. If you are a valid priest and along comes fucking one of the fakers, you know, Wojtyla or Bergoglio, or even before them, actually right before them, you know, Roncalli was the first anti-pope. And you can say, oh, well, but, you know, the priest was a bit confused and then Roncalli died and it wasn't really clear. Okay, fine. With Roncalli, he was confused. Well, Montini comes up next. Montini was the arch-heretic who produced, who published, let's say, didn't produce them, but he published, well, he helped produce them, but he published all of the Vatican II documents. Of those 16 documents, 15 of them have direct heresy in them, which I describe in detail in there, in enough detail that you can see at least one or two of the heresies in every document, right? And Roncalli helped create the first two of those, so by that fact alone, he becomes a public and notorious heretic. Montini becomes a public and notorious heretic. You're a priest of the Catholic Church. You can't recognize direct heresy that a layman can see. Really? No. You're a coward and a liar. And then you give the Mass pretending that these fake imposters are popes? No. You're still confused in the 70s when everybody breaks away? You're still confused in the 80s when they create this new fake code of canon law that's completely satanic? And its only purpose is to invalidate the real code of canon law that was unchanged for 30 years from when it was created until the death of Pope Pius XII, and really until 1983. Well, never mind, because what happened in 1983 was done by Satanists, so it doesn't count. But anyway, the code of canon law was put together, you know, over a period of years. They consulted almost 7,000 documents to make sure there was no contradiction with the old documents and that the total dogma of the Catholic Church was compiled properly in one book. And then after it was published, they spent the next 30 years asking any priest, any cleric to like find any contradictions in it. And guess what happened in all those 30 years? One change on Code 1099 done by Pope Pius XII himself, and only on part 2. And it's to do with some detail of marriage. It's got nothing to do with anything else. The Code of Canon Law of 1917 is the unmovable rock, the bastion of Catholic dogma. So, and Vatican II completely goes against it. So you're pretending to be a priest. You're a Novus Orcian. And guess what cum ex apostolato officio says? And guess what the Code of Canon Law says? If you receive a known, public, notorious heretic as though he was not, you yourself become a heretic. That priest that you go to, he might be a very nice guy, you might like him, but he is not a Catholic priest. He has been a heretic. And when you've corrected him, and he's now giving the proper Mass, he may now be giving a legitimate Mass. He might be giving a valid Mass, but he might be giving a valid Mass, perhaps, now, but it's illegitimate. He is illegitimate. So you can still take the Mass, but it's not a good thing. And Chris Covea says, my grandma understands that Bergoglio is heretic because I read Pilder, based grandson, I know. But I don't know how to tell her that the so-called priests are heretics because they follow Vatican II. Chris, I know you're only a young boy. Save some money, buy this. Give it to your grandma to read when you're finished with it. Okay? This explains that. All of it. It explains it in detail and in a way that is irrefutable. Because she lives in a country where there are no sedevacantist churches, in Ecuador. Yeah, I'm sorry about it. It's a tough time, but the truth is the truth. I'm not going to pretend it's something else. Saint Augustine was an open and notorious heretic. Should he have not had no authority after he finally became a proper Catholic? Jean Dortal, are you dense? Are you dense? Being a heretic before you become a Catholic is not an issue. If you're saying that he was a pretend Catholic or whatever, and then he became a proper Catholic, Saint Augustine is considered a doctor of the church because of the books he wrote. I'm not even a priest. I could potentially, okay, it's unlikely, but potentially I could become a doctor of the church because I wrote this. I'm not even a priest. Okay? Doesn't mean that he had authority over people. And by authority, I don't mean that he can't write true things. That's something else. That's not authority over people. That's knowledge. You're giving information. Don't conflate the things. It's one of the things that I'm discussing here. Learn to think. Do not conflate things. Do not mix two things that are completely separate issues. Giving information, you can get good information from a complete heretic. No problem. Okay, giving information is one thing. Having authority to do the Mass, to issue the sacraments, to define how to interpret some piece of dogma, that is something else. Henry Collins, I was listening to the former exorcist Fra Malachi Martin in an interview he had in 1995, and he said that soon the Catholics will have to say to the Holy Father, no more. Yeah, Malachi Martin is an interesting character. I don't know where I stand with him yet. I've read a book by him, which is probably one of the scariest books I've ever read. But yeah, he definitely had some elements of truth. I don't know. What are the Jesuits up to? I don't know. They're all Novus Orcians, so they're scum. And Jean Dortal says he was a bishop. Okay. Look, I need to, it's one of the things I need to look into, the St. Augustine. It's on my list of stuff to do. I haven't had a chance to read into it yet. But I think that you're confusing different things. St. Augustine was a criminal, I believe, before he became Catholic. So It depends what you mean, where, when, and so on. And also, you've got to keep in mind when these things happened. It doesn't mean that the dogma is different, but it means that certain things took place that would not be allowed to take place now. Let's put it that way. Although, having said that, given the current situation, perhaps there is a wiggle room there. And look, I'm not telling you not to go, Jean. I'm not telling you not to go to mass with that priest. If he does a non una cum mass now, the mass is valid. It might be legitimate, but it's valid. And if he was ordained as a priest, he is a valid priest. It's just what I said about Vigano. I say the same thing in here. Say Vigano becomes pope tomorrow. It would be a valid pope, but it would be legitimate. In other words, it's valid because by divine law, you can accept him as pope, but it's illegitimate because by dogmatic church law, he shouldn't be. Okay, so that's where you stand with that priest based on what you've told me. So I'm not telling you not to go and get sacraments from him. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying be careful. Know where the stance is, right? He was a bishop. Okay, name of the book. Oh, the book by Father Malachi Martin was. He's the one on exorcism. I can't remember, but look, I don't necessarily suggest you read that book for a couple of reasons. Reading about exorcisms and so on can open you up to, let's say, attention by entities that you'd rather not have attention of. And it's like kids that mess around with a Ouija board. I'd advise you not to do it. You don't need to know. You're not going to be an exorcist, and yeah, hostage to the devil. He's written a few books. I don't remember the title of the one I read. Maybe I have it in here. But it's pretty intense stuff because it can open you up to certain truths and realities that it is. I don't believe that ignorance is bliss, but sometimes ignorance is safety, put it that way. So it's up to you. So would Vigano be considered an anti-pope if he were to become pope? I don't know the details. I know that he was ordained in the early 60s, so it's possible that he was validly ordained. But he has, kept quiet for 50 years, and now he's like playing sort of devil's advocate. As far as I'm concerned, to me, that would mean that he's just, he still has not denounced the anti-popes. He's just said that Vatican II should be forgotten. You can't do that. So, but let's say that Vigano grows a pair of balls tomorrow and says that all the anti-popes since 1958 were all and are anti-popes, and that he was a cowardly little sneak that like kept quiet all these 50 years just because it was comfortable for him to have his ass in butter. Let's say he does that, and then they elect him pope. He would have been. And let's say he repents of all his own sins and blah blah blah. He would then, if he was validly ordained, which I think there's a good chance he was, he would then be a valid pope, but an illegitimate pope. As I said, he would be valid because by divine rules, he was validly ordained. He was a heretic, but he's repented. Therefore, he is again allowed to be a cleric. But it would be legitimate because he should spend the rest of his life in penance. And instead, he's becoming pope. So it would be a valid pope, but it's kind of like, yeah, you're a valid pope, but you're kind of still wrong, that sort of thing. I hope I've explained that. Guys, I've been going for 2 hours. It's past 2 in the morning here, 2 in the morning. So once we do reclaim the church, the errors of Vatican II must be part of the catechism. Yeah, the errors of Vatican II. I was like, for a minute there, I was saying, what? Are you saying anything of that? No. Anything of Vatican II must be excised at all, but made an example of course. That's 30 thumbs up, 32 of you in the room. Thank you very much. I'm going to say good night, guys, and it's going to be a quick good night because I've had and mandatory for priestly formation. Yes, not just that, but all the things. And Jean, sorry if I went a bit hard on you, mate. Well, but you know how I am by now. It's just a couple of slaps between friends. Okay, good night all. Thank you very much. And God bless you all. Thank you.